The church was silent, save for the soft sniffles and muffled sobs of those gathered. Rows of uniformed soldiers stood stiffly, their faces stoic, but their eyes betraying the weight of their grief. At the front of the room, a flag-draped casket rested, its polished surface reflecting the light. David Hallway, a decorated veteran, was gone. His comrades, family, and friends had come to say their final goodbyes. But it wasn't just the humans who felt the loss. Outside the church, a German shepherd named Max sat patiently, his ears perked and his eyes fixed on the doors. Max was no ordinary dog. He was a Y9 military working dog, trained to detect explosives and protect his handler. For years, he and David had been inseparable, a team bound by trust and loyalty. Max had saved David's life countless times, and David had done the same for him. They were more than partners. They were family. As the service progressed, Max grew restless. He whined softly, pawing at the ground. He could sense something was wrong. David hadn't come back to him. The dog's instincts told him to find his handler, to protect him, as he always had. Suddenly, Max bolted toward the church doors, slipping inside before anyone could stop him. The congregation gasped as the dog trotted down the aisle, his nails clicking against the wooden floor. Max's eyes locked onto the casket. He let out a low, mournful whine, his tail drooping. Without hesitation, he leaped onto the casket, his paws resting on the flag as he nuzzled the cold wood. A collective sob rose from the crowd. Max's grief was palpable, his loyalty unwavering even in death. The priest paused, his voice breaking, as he watched the scene unfold. Even in his final moments, he said softly, David's bond with Max remains unbroken. This is the love of a soldier and his dog, a love that transcends life itself. The room fell silent, the weight of Max's devotion hanging heavy in the air. No one dared to move him. For a moment, it was as if David was still there, his spirit comforting his faithful companion. Years before the funeral, David and Max's story began on a military training ground. David, a young and determined soldier, had just been assigned his first Y9 partner, a spirited German shepherd named Max. From the moment they met, there was an unspoken understanding between them. Max's sharp eyes and alert posture told David this was no ordinary dog, and David's calm, commanding presence reassured Max that he had found someone he could trust. Their training was intense. Days were spent running drills, practicing commands, and building trust. Max excelled in detection work, his keen nose able to sniff out explosives with pinpoint accuracy. David, in turn, learned to read Max's every move, the twitch of an ear, the tilt of his head, the subtle change in his posture. They became a seamless team, their bond growing stronger with each passing day. But it wasn't just about the missions. In the quiet moments when the sun dipped below the horizon and the base grew still, David would sit with Max, scratching behind his ears and talking to him as if he were a friend. Max would listen, his head resting on David's lap, his tail thumping softly against the ground. Those moments were theirs alone, a sanctuary from the chaos of their duties. One night, during a particularly grueling exercise, David and Max were tasked with navigating a simulated war zone. The air was thick with smoke, and the sounds of distant explosions echoed around them. Max led the way, his nose to the ground, his body tense with focus. Suddenly he stopped, his ears twitching. David froze, trusting Max's instincts. Moments later, a hidden explosive device was discovered, its timer ticking down dangerously. Thanks to Max, disaster was averted. That night, as they sat under the stars, David looked at Max and said, "You're more than a partner, Max. You're my brother." Max responded with a soft bark, his eyes locked on David's. In that moment, their bond was sealed, a bond built on trust, loyalty, and an unspoken promise to always protect each other. The call came unexpectedly. David and Max were deployed to a war-torn region where danger lurked around every corner. The mission was clear: locate and neutralize hidden explosives to ensure the safety of their unit. For David and Max, this was what they had trained for, but nothing could have prepared them for the harsh realities of war. The days were long and grueling. The scorching sun beat down on them as they patrolled dusty streets and crumbling buildings. Max worked tirelessly, his nose never faltering as he scoured the area for threats. David stayed close, his eyes constantly scanning their surroundings, his hand resting reassuringly on Max's back. They moved as one, their connection unshakable even in the face of chaos. One afternoon, while clearing a village, Max suddenly froze. His body went rigid, his ears perked, and his nose twitched furiously. David immediately signaled the team to halt. Max led them to a hidden cache of explosives buried beneath the rubble of a collapsed building. The team worked quickly to disarm the threat, but the tension was palpable. One wrong move, and it could all be over. As they moved on, David crouched beside Max, ruffling his fur. "Good boy, Max. You just saved us all," he whispered. Max wagged his tail, his eyes bright with pride. But the moment was short-lived. The sound of gunfire erupted in the distance, and they were forced to take cover. The war was relentless, and there was no time to rest. That night, as they huddled in a makeshift shelter, David held Max close. The dog's warmth was a comfort in the cold, unforgiving night. "We'll get through this, buddy," David murmured. "No matter what happens, we'll always have each other." Max nuzzled against him, his quiet presence a reminder of the bond they shared. But war has a way of testing even the strongest bonds. One fateful day, during a routine patrol, disaster struck. An explosion rocked the ground, sending debris flying in all directions. David was thrown to the ground, his ears ringing and his vision blurred. When he finally regained his senses, his first thought was of Max. "Max!" he shouted, his voice hoarse. He scrambled to his feet, ignoring the pain coursing through his body. He found Max lying a few feet away, his body still but his chest rising and falling. Relief washed over David as he knelt beside his partner, checking for injuries. Max had taken the brunt of the blast, shielding David from the worst of it. "You crazy dog," David said, his voice trembling as he stroked Max's fur. "You saved me again." Max let out a weak whine, his tail thumping faintly against the ground. Despite the pain, he was still there, still loyal, still fighting. The explosion left its mark on both David and Max. David suffered minor injuries, but Max wasn't as lucky. Shrapnel had torn through his side, and his leg was badly injured. The medics worked tirelessly to stabilize him, but the damage was severe. David refused to leave Max's side, his heart heavy with guilt and fear. "He's not just a dog," David pleaded with the medics. "He's my partner, my family. You have to save him." The medics assured him they would do everything they could, but the road to recovery would be long and uncertain. For weeks, Max remained in the veterinary unit, his body weak but his spirit unbroken. David visited him every day, bringing him food, talking to him, and gently stroking his fur. Max's eyes would light up whenever David entered the room, his tail wagging weakly. It was as if he knew David was there, fighting for him just as he had fought for David. During one of his visits, David sat beside Max's bed, his voice soft but filled with determination. "You're going to be okay, Max. We've been through too much to let this stop us. You're the strongest dog I know, and I'm not giving up on you." Max looked at him, his gaze steady, as if to say, "I'm not giving up either." Slowly but surely, Max began to heal. His strength returned, and with the help of physical therapy, he started to walk again. David was there every step of the way, encouraging him, cheering him on. The bond between them grew even stronger, forged in the fires of adversity. When Max was finally cleared to return to duty, David felt a surge of pride. "You did it, buddy," he said, kneeling to hug Max. "I knew you had it in you." Max barked, his tail wagging furiously. It was a moment of triumph, a testament to their resilience and unwavering loyalty. But the war wasn't over. David and Max were soon back in the field, their partnership as strong as ever. They faced danger together, relying on each other to navigate the chaos. Through it all, their bond remained unbreakable, a beacon of hope in the darkest of times. Months passed, and David and Max continued to serve with unwavering dedication. Their reputation as an unstoppable team grew, and they were often called upon for the most dangerous missions. But no matter how perilous the situation, they faced it together, their trust in each other unshakable. One fateful day, they were assigned to clear a suspected insurgent hideout. Intelligence suggested the area was heavily fortified with explosives, and the mission was deemed high risk. David and Max knew the stakes, but they also knew they were the best team for the job. As they approached the hideout, Max's senses were on high alert. His nose twitched as he scanned the area, his body tense with focus. David followed closely, his eyes darting around, his hand resting on Max's back. The air was thick with tension, every step fraught with danger. Suddenly, Max stopped. His ears perked, and he let out a low growl. David immediately signaled the team to halt. Max's body language was clear. There was something ahead. David crouched beside him, his heart pounding. "What is it, boy?" he whispered. Max's eyes were fixed on a nearby building, his nose pointing toward a hidden entrance. David and the team moved cautiously, following Max's lead. Inside the building, they discovered a network of tunnels filled with explosives. It was a ticking time bomb, and they had to act fast. The team worked quickly to disarm the devices, but the situation was precarious. One wrong move, and the entire structure could collapse. As they worked, Max remained by David's side, his eyes never leaving his handler. David could feel the weight of the moment, the gravity of their mission. He looked at Max, his voice steady but filled with emotion. "We've got this, Max, just like always." But fate had other plans. As they neared the final device, a sudden explosion rocked the building. The force of the blast threw David to the ground, his ears ringing and his vision blurred. He struggled to his feet, his heart racing as he searched for Max. "Max!" he shouted, his voice hoarse. He found Max lying a few feet away, his body still, but his chest rising and falling. Relief washed over David as he knelt beside his partner, checking for injuries. Max had taken the brunt of the blast, shielding David from the worst of it. "You crazy dog," David said, his voice trembling as he stroked Max's fur. "You saved me again." Max let out a weak whine, his tail thumping faintly against the ground. Despite the pain, he was still there, still loyal, still fighting. The team quickly evacuated the building, carrying Max to safety. David refused to leave his side, his heart heavy with fear and guilt. He had promised to protect Max, just as Max had protected him. But in that moment, he felt helpless. The medics worked tirelessly to stabilize Max, but his injuries were severe. Shrapnel had torn through his body, and his breathing was labored. David sat beside him, his hand resting on Max's head, his eyes filled with tears. "You're going to be okay, Max," he whispered, his voice breaking. "You have to be." Max looked up at him, his eyes filled with a quiet strength. He let out a soft whine, his tail thumping weakly against the ground. It was as if he was trying to reassure David, to tell him that everything would be all right. But David knew better. He could see the pain in Max's eyes, the toll the injuries had taken on his body. The medics did everything they could, but it wasn't enough. Max's injuries were too severe, and his body was too weak to fight any longer. As the minutes ticked by, his breathing grew shallower, his movement slower. David held him close, his tears falling onto Max's fur. "I'm so sorry, Max," David said, his voice choked with emotion. "You've always been there for me, always protected me. I wish I could have done the same for you." Max nuzzled against him, his eyes never leaving David's. In that moment, it was as if he was saying goodbye. With a final shuddering breath, Max closed his eyes. His body went still, his chest no longer rising and falling. David held him tightly, his heart breaking as he realized his partner, his friend, his family was gone. The room was silent, the weight of Max's sacrifice hanging heavy in the air. David sat there for what felt like an eternity, holding Max's lifeless body, his mind filled with memories of their time together. The training, the missions, the quiet moments. They all flashed before his eyes, a testament to the bond they had shared. Finally, David stood, his legs trembling. He gently laid Max down, his hand lingering on the dog's head. "You were the best partner I could have ever asked for," he said, his voice barely above a whisper. "I'll never forget you, Max. Never." As he walked away, his heart heavy with grief, David knew that Max's sacrifice would not be in vain. He had given his life to protect others, to fulfill his duty, and to honor the bond he shared with David. It was the ultimate act of loyalty, a testament to the love and devotion that had defined their partnership. The news of Max's passing spread quickly through the unit. Soldiers who had served alongside David and Max mourned the loss of the brave German shepherd who had saved so many lives. Stories of Max's heroism and unwavering loyalty were shared, each one a testament to the impact he had made. David was given time to grieve, but the pain of losing Max was something he carried with him every day. He found solace in the memories they had created, the bond they had shared. Max's collar, worn and weathered from years of service, became a cherished keepsake, a symbol of the love and loyalty that had defined their partnership. One evening, as David sat alone in his quarters, he found himself reflecting on the lessons Max had taught him. Max had shown him the true meaning of loyalty, of selflessness, of unconditional love. He had been more than a partner. He had been a friend, a brother, a source of strength in the darkest of times. David knew that Max's legacy would live on, not just in his own heart, but in the hearts of everyone who had known him. Max had touched lives, saved lives, and inspired those around him to be better, to be stronger, to be more loyal. In honor of Max's memory, David decided to establish a foundation to support military working dogs and their handlers. The foundation would provide resources, training, and care for these brave animals, ensuring that their sacrifices were never forgotten. It was a way to keep Max's spirit alive, to honor the bond they had shared, and to give back to the community that had given him so much. The foundation was named Max's Legacy, and it quickly gained support from soldiers, veterans, and animal lovers alike. David poured his heart and soul into the project, driven by the memory of his faithful companion. He knew that Max would have been proud, that his legacy would continue to make a difference long after he was gone. Years later, as David stood before a crowd at the dedication of a memorial for military working dogs, he felt a sense of peace. The memorial, a bronze statue of a German shepherd standing tall and proud, was a tribute to Max and all the dogs who had served alongside their human partners. "This memorial is more than just a statue," David said, his voice steady but filled with emotion. "It's a reminder of the bond we share with these incredible animals, a bond built on trust, loyalty, and love. Max taught me that love transcends life, that loyalty knows no bounds. He may be gone, but his legacy lives on in each of us." As the crowd applauded, David looked up at the statue, his eyes filled with tears. In that moment, he felt Max's presence, as if his faithful companion was standing beside him once more. He knew that Max would always be with him, in his heart, in his memories, in the legacy they had created together. And as the sun set, casting a golden glow over the memorial, David whispered the words he had said so many times before. "Good boy, Max. Good boy."
Subscribe and press the bell icon so that you never miss the amazing video.